Halpern's framework for critical thinking. Halpern defined particular categories that the critical thinker can use in terms of the process of critical thinking. These are thinking and language. This is one category that Halpern defined for the effective critical thinker. Another category is argument analysis, being able to unpick aspects of an argument and understand the components. Another skill for the critical thinker is hypothesis testing, looking at particular theories around why things happen and finding ways to test them out and see whether they are true. The critical thinker also has skills in dealing with the probability of particular things happening, assessing whether something is more likely or less likely to occur. There are also skills around decision making and problem solving that the critical thinker brings to the process of teaching in the classroom. And along with memory skills, there's also an aspect of creative thinking that the critical thinker needs to engage with. Creative thinking encourages the critical thinker to think outside of the box, to think a little bit differently in order to find solutions. So let's look at each in turn. Thinking and language is very much about recognizing, understanding particular languages, particular vocabulary which are used in the classroom, and how these can be used and misused in order to facilitate what is happening, to use definitions and meanings in order to think through a process. There are also things like leading questions as well as open-ended questions that the critical thinker can use. Paraphrasing is another aspect of the language and thinking process which can help the critical thinker consider things from different points of view. Argument analysis is very much about identifying the premises and the conclusions being drawn from statements. Looking at counter arguments also is another skill of the critical thinker. Perhaps most significant is the ability to consider the credibility of the evidences being presented. For example, the critical thinker might discount some evidence because it contains some bias, for example. Creative thinking, as I said, is very much thinking outside of the box, thinking differently. This could be about redefining problems from a different perspective, generating other possibilities from that redefinition which perhaps are not normally considered. And this in turn leads to a particular risk-taking perspective by the critical thinker, because it does rely on doing things a little bit differently. Hypothesis testing is looking at theories and seeing if we can test them out as critical thinkers and see if they still hold true for us. It's very much about not only predicting but also confirming those predictions and looking at the variables at play in the classroom and how those variables can impact on one another. Dealing with probability and uncertainty, part of taking risk is assuming that there will be some results which are not what we anticipate, and therefore we need to deal with those unanticipated results. So there is a certain degree of dealing with uncertainty that the critical thinker needs to be able to do. Decision making, obviously the critical thinker will need to make decisions about way things are done, what is actually done, who does those particular things, and looking at the benefits and the other side of the coin in relation to actions in the classroom. It can also be about looking at information from a particular point of view in order to be able to make decisions. And problem solving is a key skill here. What the critical thinker is always doing is looking at a situation and seeing how it can be improved. And therefore, in terms of this aspect of their role, there is a certain understanding that goals need to be reviewed and reset, issues need to be addressed and improved. And therefore, there needs to be some sort of evaluation also of the problems which are being addressed to actually review the quality of the improvement, and so further changes can be made. Creative thinking and memory skills come together in a way, because in order to be creative, we also need to monitor and evaluate our own creative skills. And there is then a certain level of open-mindedness and flexibility which is needed in order to be confident about how we're being creative. And this relies on the reflective practitioner remembering previous experiences in order to draw on those for new experiences. It means being explicit rather than implicit, so that it's clear what is truth and what we're actually building up as we move through our careers. And we can represent this framework again within a diagram. And here we can see in the center of the diagram is the critical thinker, the reflective practitioner, surrounded by these aspects of the critical thinking framework, which includes all these roles and responsibilities that the teacher takes on, from problem solving and using language as practical skills, through to more emotional skills like confidence and open-mindedness, all within a framework operating in a school, for example, curriculum and disciplinary traditions.